Yo, what's cracking, guys? It's your boy Crix209 back at you guys with another video, and today we are going to be going over UFC frame data. Now, I've been wanting to make this video for quite a long time because understanding UFC frame data is vital to becoming a good player at the UFC franchise. So I wanted to make this video to help you guys get a better understanding of what frames are, what frame categories are in UFC 4 and UFC in general, as well as things like frame traps, how to execute frame traps, and how to defend against them when you see your opponent is trying to do them to you. So with that being said, let's jump into the first point that I have for you guys in the game, or in this video, and that is, what are frames? So if you guys are newer to fighting games, frames and how they play a part in games like UFC is, frames are a move speed basically. So the bigger the frame number, the slower the move is going to be. So the the move that has the fastest frames in this game is the jab. The jab is quick. It has the least amount of frames of any move in UFC. So it's always going to beat out whatever strike is thrown at it. So what does that mean? If you throw a hook, it's going to have longer frames than a jab. So if you input a jab and your opponent inputs a hook, your jab, and they're inputted at the same exact time, the jab is going to beat out the hook every single time. So those are what frames are, and those are how frames play a part in UFC. Now, the next point that I have for you guys in this video is frame categories. Now, these are very, very important, and these are really things that you guys probably see, or you do see every single time you fight against somebody, albeit the computer or on online championships or in quick fight. You see these all the time. You just might not know that you're seeing them, or you might not know the names of them. But we're going to go into the different type of categories, and we're just gonna go into each one individually. So the first one that I have for you guys is the startup frames. Startup frames are pretty basic. It's the basic startup of your move. So this plays a huge part in the game for when you're going for body strikes. I don't know if you guys have ever been flash KO'd by an uppercut from guys like Connor. If they hit you at the beginning of a body hook or something like that, they're going to do massive damage to you. So startup frames are very important because you want to try to catch your opponent on the startup of a move to get the most damage possible. So the next category we have is vulnerability. Now this one is super important because the more vulnerable you are, the more damage you're either going to deal to your opponent if you're catching your opponent in vulnerability, or the more damage you're going to take if they catch you in vulnerability. And vulnerability is just how vulnerable you are to taking a high damage shot. So just remember that when you guys are in fights, when you guys are throwing your combinations, when you're throwing certain strikes, that vulnerability plays a huge part in damage. Now the next one that I have for you guys is the counter windows. Now you guys see these all the time if you're back slipping, if you're slip straighting, if you're ducking down and throwing uppercuts or anything like that. These are pretty simple. This is when you make your opponent miss. UFC gives you a window in which to land a high damage shot or to land a high damage combination if your opponent isn't aware or wasn't aware that you were going to slip a strike. So those are counter windows. And the last one that I have for you guys is evasion properties. Now, these are very important and annoying when it comes to knee and elbow spammers. The knees have high evasion properties, and evasion properties are basically when a move is basically immune to getting hit by a certain strike. So if you throw a knee, if your opponent throws a knee, or let's say I throw a knee as Cub Swanson, and Darren Elkins, my opponent, throws a hook, my knee is gonna have evasion properties against a lead hook or a rear hook or anything that I will land, and Darren Elkins will never land a hook if we input it at the same exact time. So those are what evasion properties are. Or like if you go for a jab, lead body straight, and your opponent tries to throw a combination to the head, the lead body or the body straight will have evasion properties against combinations up top if it's timed out properly. So those are what evasion properties are. They play a big part, not too much on a lot of strikes, but on things like knees and elbows, they really do play a huge role as to why those certain moves are very cheesy and why they need to be adjusted in UFC 5. But we're not going to get into that because this is not that video. So let's get into the last thing and the most important thing that I have for you guys, and that is what are frame traps and how to execute and defend against them. Now, I get this question a lot when I am on stream. Crooks, what are frame traps? What do you mean by you're trying to frame trap your opponent? How do I look for frame traps? How do I do them? And how do I defend against them if my opponent is just walking forward trying to get me into a frame trap? Well, frame traps are basically when your opponent puts you in negative frames and they are in positive frames. Now, before we go along any further, I'm going to break down a little bit on what negative and positive frames are. Now, if I land a jab straight, I am in positive frames. So, if I'm in positive frames, then you are in negative frames. And these play an important role in these kind of situations, because if we input a combo at the same exact time and I am in positive frames and you are in negative frames, I will win the exchange every single time. So you want to be careful when your opponent is trying to put you in negative frames, and you need to be aware of what your opponent is landing and what they are not, because you cannot put somebody in negative frames if they're taking shots off the block. If you're blocking, you cannot be put into negative frames unless you get block broken. But if your opponent is landing, like if they land a simple jab straight, they are in positive frames and you are in negative frames. So you want to try to do your best to either slip off or be looking for a counter, because if you input a combination at the wrong time or you input it at the same time as your opponent, you are not only going to lose because you are in positive frames, you're going to eat vulnerability, which is something that you really do not want to do in this game, because it could really cost you a fight. So those are positive and negative frames. And I kind of went into frame traps just a little bit. And frame traps are when you land on your opponent and you get your opponent to throw a combination they don't understand that they are in a frame trap, and they try to input a combination when you are in positive frames and you land heavy damage because you are at such an advantage in frames. Now, how do you execute those is real simple. Like I said, if you land a jab straight on the block, you are not in positive frames. You cannot frame trap your opponent in positive frames, positive and negative frames, if your opponent is blocking, unless you block break. So be aware that if they're just blocking, you are not at positive frames. But if they take a jab straight off of their face, like Darren Elkins did here, and then you input a combination stationary and they input a combination stationary, you are at positive frames and they are at negative frames, and that is what is called a frame trap. You trap your opponent into doing something that they really shouldn't be doing, and you're going to punish them for it. Super important to know. And if you're playing any kind of fighting game, whether it be Tekken, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, frame traps are super important because they are very prevalent in every single kind of fighting game, not just UFC. Now, how you want to defend against that, obviously, is like I said, you're going to want to block. You're going to want to move your head off. That's why a lot of elite players, you see them double slipping, triple slipping, moving their head off like this, because they are trying to avoid being frame trapped. That's one way to defend against it. And the other way is just to respond. You want to respond and pay attention to what your opponent is throwing. So if your opponent is trying to frame trap you with a jab straight every single time inside the pocket, then you need to slip that off. You need to move your head, punish them for trying to come in and to just throw a jab straight. You want to try to move your head off. You want to circle, so that way your opponent cannot close the distance against you and really even get an opportunity to try to frame trap you. Now, these are very important because up against high level players, they are looking to put you in advantageous spots for themselves. So you want to try to utilize the tips that I just gave you to avoid frame traps at all costs against these guys. This is personally what I do against them as well. Super important to intermediate and beginner players that you guys understand what frame traps are, as well as how to defend against them until you are able to use them yourselves. But all right, guys, those are the 3 things that I had for you guys, the 3 points that I had for you guys in this video. Let me know if this video was beneficial for you guys in the comment section. Let me know if you guys have any other questions on frame data for UFC. In the comment section, I will answer every single comment. And if I need to make another video to go more in depth on something that I covered, I can do that. But if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button. If you are newer to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It'd be much appreciated. We make nothing but combat sport content on this channel. So if that's your guys' thing, then you are in the right place. But until the next video, guys, take it easy, be safe, enjoy your day, and I will see you guys in the next one.